One of the joys of going through the collection is coming upon paintings that you didn't know were in it from the previous publicity. This is another Gilbert Stuart. It's a portrait of William Smith, and he was actually a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, so don't tell the Philadelphia Museum of Art. They may say that it should have stayed in Philadelphia. And then there's the somewhat dicey history of some of the acquisitions. This was a deaccession of the National Academy that occurred before the famous or infamous Church and Gifford deaccessions. This is Richard Caton Woodville's War News from Mexico, formerly of the National Academy in New York. And here's Aiken's Benjamin Rand, Alice Walton's Consolation Prize from Thomas Jefferson University, when she wasn't able to acquire his Gross Clinic. I saw it at the Philadelphia Museum while this museum was under construction, and now here it is at Crystal Bridges. And let us not forget Kindred Spirits, formerly of the New York Public Library. The Catskills come to the Ozarks. And Kindred Spirits is in a room with a whole host of Hudson River School paintings, perhaps the strongest concentration within this collection. One of the things you learn about the collection going through is that they have certain artists in tremendous depth. This is a whole wall of Martin Johnson Heade, and these aren't the only Heades you'll encounter. There are others as well. There are birds, butterflies, and more birds and butterflies. And it's quite a strong collection. All came from one source. One of the features of these galleries is the long sweeping vista on curved walls to give you a sense of the range and sweep of American art. This happens to be a wall related to American Impressionism. We have a Child Hassam here. Probably not the one Child Hassam one would want if one were showing only one, and that's a part of the collection. They have excellent examples, but not always the quintessential one. This is a Theodore Robinson. Not always the quintessential one that you might want by that artist, and of course that has to do with availability and coming kind of late to the game. A lovely Mary Cassatt with a painting with a woman with a book, but no women with babies. And as you leave one pavilion to the next, you walk through a bridge that refreshes the eye and clears the head, with, of course, views of the ponds and the other pavilions. Navigation gets a little tricky between the late 19th century and the early 20th century. Because you've got to go down those stairs that I just showed you, and through a few corridors, and then into the early 20th century galleries. And as you can see, the 20th century galleries are really very empty, unlike the ones upstairs, and that's the problem. They're on a different level from the rest of the galleries. The other problem with these 20th century art galleries is that at night we're seeing the reflection of these gallery boxes in the windows rather than being able to see out those, whoops, there's me, there's my reflection, rather than being able to see out the windows to the scenery outside. This is one of the two suspension bridge structures in the museum complex. The other one is a restaurant, which is open and airy and delightful. This is a combination of two concepts, galleries and open window walls, that really don't work well together. As you can see, there are two boxes. There's another one down there for art. It's an awkward solution. It doesn't work. And by day, with a bright sunlight coming from this direction, this corridor is pretty much all screened in by shades along the window wall. Here's a quick look at one of the 20th century galleries, inside one of the boxes. Several Marsden Hartleys, including this painting that is the cover image on the museum's catalog, and it's much more exciting in person. You can see that impasto in the clouds, which doesn't really come across in the photographs. They have one portrait, a very powerful one, and I believe another landscape. Here's that other Marsden Hartley landscape that I was talking about. I think it was put here in part to resonate with this little Georgia O'Keeffe, one of only 3 O'Keeffes, none of them particularly major. You can see where Fisk University's Georgia O'Keeffe Radiator Building at night would be very welcome as an addition to this collection if the courts ever allow Crystal Bridges to buy half share in Fisk University's Modernist collection. The collection has certain strong concentrations. This is a whole wall of Stuart Davis, although the museum still covets a couple more from periods not covered in its rather strong survey. And catty-cornered is a Gorky painting, which goes nicely with the Davises. Here's the famous Norman Rockwell Rosie the Riveter, but the one that I really like even more is by a little-known artist, Frances Criss, also showing women, strong women working in wartime. This one is called Day Shift. And there are the little, I love these little metal filings down here of whatever it is she's grinding down. To me, this works a lot better. Curator Kevin Murphy said to me that he felt American regionalism is one of the areas in which the collection really could use some boosting up. This is a Grant Wood, and so is this, but these are not the great paintings that by which they'd like to represent him. This is a work on paper, this is a charcoal on board. Relatively minor examples, as are the Thomas Hart Bentons, which is particularly unfortunate because Bentonville was named after one of Thomas Hart Benton's ancestors, who was also named Thomas Hart Benton, and he was a senator. This is a very nice one, but it's also quite a small one. Jackson Pollock is underrepresented with 3 very small works. None of the great drip paintings, but Hope Springs Eternal here. Although they don't have a Jackson Pollock drip, they do have a Janet Sobel. Janet who, you ask? Apparently Pollock once visited her studio and saw her work, and according to Don Bacigalupi, the director of Crystal Bridges, this may have inspired Pollock to do his famous drip paintings. I guess further research will probably be needed to confirm this. Crystal Bridges came rather late to the late 20th century art purchasing gambit. This is not really my favorite Joan Mitchell. And this is an insufficient representation of Robert Rauschenberg, here positioned, as has become almost a cliche, next to Jasper Johns, once his partner, and now again side by side with Rauschenberg. And some more of the late 20th century installation. Do not try to swing that Calder as the Sunday morning program showed the reporter doing. It does squeak, as she said, and the guards will squeak if you try to do what she did. And a look at the final gallery in this installation. Finglas, bourgeois. I kind of like that as the final statement. And now, after a long, hard day in the galleries, Culture Girl is ready to chow down. I'm in the restaurant for Crystal Bridges, open on Wednesday nights, as is the museum. A very nice striped bass. I've already started to decimate it. It's delicious, as are the veggies. Pinot Noir goes nicely with it, enjoying that as well. But I have to say, they missed the boat here. The name of the restaurant is 11, and seriously, guys, you can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant, excepting Alice.